Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Glad to have this man back. Former federal agent Victor Avila. He is running for Congress. He is Victor Avila for Congress.com. Victor, what is it? Is it District 23?
District 23, San Antonio to El Paso.
All right. It's a huge district. I think geographically one of the biggest. And a lot of border in that district as well. First of all, good to see you. How's everything going? Okay?
It's going great. A lot of traveling throughout the district.
You're down there by the border all the time. And I want to start with something you just now told me. And I saw this story, a quick blurb yesterday. There's no way the Biden administration is taking the materials that we bought as taxpayers, and I think it was $300 million worth, something like that, and selling it for pennies on the dollar. There's no way they're getting rid of what we could actually use to be a barrier between us and Mexico.
There actually are, and I did a shot down there by a portion of it. You have them, you have walls, these planks in McAllen all the way to El Paso, and I was at the one in El Paso this past week, and I was pointing them out how you and I have already paid for this, but we were also paying for storage in the middle of the desert, paying them multi-million dollars of storage, and then paying the contractors the money that they would have earned for building the wall that they didn't. So we're paying.
I'm sorry, we're paying them to build the wall that we're now telling them not to build, but they're still getting full pay.
They're still getting full pay, multi-millions dollars. You know what they did in that portion down there? They knocked down the old wall, and they were about to build a brand new wall, and then Biden comes in and stops the whole construction. So he said, instead of just build a new wall, you have the material. Well, no. Put the old one back up. And that's what they did. They actually have the old wall back up with these stilts holding it up. It is ridiculous. And then I point out endless by your sight, all you could see of panels after panels after panels of wall that you and I already paid for, that now we're auctioning off and selling it off, like you said, pennies on the dollar.
It makes no sense. Victor, you've been down there a lot, and you talk to people that aren't necessarily aligned politically with you and me, but they're people who live down there. Has anybody ever made a good argument with you, a good debate with you? Here's why we shouldn't have the wall. Here's why we shouldn't put up what we've already paid for. Here's why we should pay the contractors to not do what we told them to do. Has anybody made an argument where you went, oh, that kind of makes sense?
No. As a matter of fact, I was in Eagle Pass, Texas this past week, and I had a lot of Democrats come see me and hear me out. And guess what they said? I agree with you, Victor. We agree with you. Please do something. We have lost our communities. We are tired of the traffic. And that's not just illegal immigration. Let me tell you, the spikes in crime in these towns, in El Paso alone, 43%, and I spoke to the DA of El Paso County, 43% increase in crime in El Paso, Texas. Huge increases in Eagle Pass, Texas, because a lot of these illegals are not leaving. Yes, a lot of them come through and it's a transit area for them. But now, all of a sudden, a lot of them are staying around and guess what? Committing crimes because they need to eat, they need shelter, they need education, they need all these things that these small communities cannot provide them. And they feel entitled. They're like, take care of me. And when they don't, they get upset and start committing crimes. Sexual crimes, violent crimes, property crimes. Yeah. This is what the people of Eagle Pass tell me. They're fed up. They want something done now.
I've never been to Ciudad Juarez, but I do know that a few years ago, El Paso, I think, had 5 murders in an entire year. This isn't happening today, but this is a few years ago. And right across the border in Juarez, I think you had 2,000, 3,000, might have been even more than that. And it was the only thing stopping that from happening in El Paso was a barrier and enforcement. And now you're telling me that crime is up 43%. We know Beto O'Rourke, Beto, this guy who thinks he's Hispanic, he's not. He's 4th-generation Irish. Every time he runs for something and he thinks he's entitled to it, he talks about he's going to tear down the fence and the wall in El Paso. Victor, we've got real numbers. I mean, actual empirical data that shows when there's no barrier, there's more crime. When there's barrier and enforcement, there's less crime. What am I missing?
Joe, you're not. You're right on target. I grew up and I'm born and raised in El Paso. I saw the crime diminish when that wall first went up in 2006, by the way. And I saw the people, first of all, the illegal aliens not being killed as they crossed the freeway. That's one thing that eliminated. And jumping into people's backyards and houses and burglarizing them, that stopped. Well, guess what? That's starting to happen again because they're opening the gates of the wall and letting them in. They're allowing right now, this administration, 6,000 people a day in El Paso alone. And you mentioned Ciudad Juarez. I swear I started my Mexican career or tour in Mexico when
Right.
there was 350 homicides a month.
Wow.
And El Paso, where they had 10, 12 homicides a year.
Right.
Well, now my parents, a lot of people that I was just there, family members and friends, they're like, we don't recognize our city anymore because we can't go downtown anymore. We have people from all over the world, not just Mexico, not just Central America, mostly Haitians, Africans, Chinese, South Americans,
And
Europeans,
a lot of Middle Easterners now are
Middle
coming through.
Easterners, a
Yeah.
lot surrounding the city.
Well, I'm glad you went there, and I want to touch on that a little bit more in a second. Let me remind people of the website, VictorAvilaForCongress.com. Last name is Avila, VictorAvilaForCongress.com. Running for District 23. It's held right now by a Republican, Tony Gonzalez, but you're challenging him, and that's fine. That's the way it works here in America, and I wish you very, very well. I've got to talk a little bit more about barriers because I know this for a fact. When San Diego finally put up a wall, they put up a wall with razor wire on top, 85% decrease in crossings. Now, that I think was either right before Trump or during Trump. And we had those real numbers. So, again, there is no argument. So, what are they saying? Those who don't want wall, have you had any opportunity to talk to them? I know the residents want it, whether they're Democrat or Republican, they want it because they're in trouble. I get that. Any politicians, any local mayors, any local sheriffs who said, Psst, Victor, here's why we don't want it.
The local politicians in El Paso, this is what they say. It's going to disrupt the communication and the relationship we have with this. They call it a sister city in Ciudad Juarez, and it's going to put a strain on
Disrupted
our
how?
relationship.
Phones work
Let
over
me tell
walls?
you,
What are they
it
talking
does
about?
not. It doesn't. I saw it happen. It doesn't disrupt people from going across the border and visiting their loved ones and the ones that live in Mexico and come to school, and all that continues to happen
There are still
legally.
ports of entry, right?
Absolutely, and
Isn't there a big freaking international bridge?
that's right. There's four of them in El Paso, so
I mean, come on.
and so they're coming legally, and
So
that's
how is that the argument then?
well, they say, first of all, they don't like the sight of it to begin with. Second of all, they say it's you're putting a strain on the relationship with Mexico. Well, I'll tell you what, that relationship with Mexico has been strained for a long time because they're not our partners anymore. They're not our friends. A real true friend and a real partner would be helping us on their side of the border in eliminating this traffic of people from, I'll tell you what, from rapes, from deaths, from drownings, from hangings, from all this, from the bailouts that we see that fail to stop and when Border Patrol or DPS wants to pull them over, that's what you would eliminate. But we're not getting the help from Mexico. That's one of the things I want to do as Congress is to hold these nations and these countries accountable and put the burden back on them, Joe. All of a sudden, all the burden is on the United States and we have to do it. I did a radio interview out of New York, Yonkers, New York, and they're changing the tune over there. They're like, wait a minute, what's going on? I said, listen, I've been telling you for 2.5 years that this is going to happen. Well, now they don't like it that they have, guess what they're building over there? Facilities, soft-sided facilities on the park.
Right.
Welcome to the party. We've been doing this. The one in El Paso, we have two huge ones in El Paso, another big one in Eagle Pass, Texas, that are over capacity with illegal aliens. We've had about enough.
We have over 7 million in the country right now. Eric Adams in New York got 100,000, and he's freaking the hell out. And maybe that freak out is what's necessary. He goes down to Washington, and the Biden administration snub him. They don't want to hear about it. You've got other mayors in other cities, like in D.C., like in Chicago. They're all freaking out as well. They have but 0.0%. Of 0.01% of
way,
anything that we're seeing here in Texas, and they're freaking out. Go ahead.
San Antonio, Texas. That's where I started last week. The huge facility out there on San Pedro that used to be the old CPS facility, energy facility.
Right.
It's about a little south of the North Park Mall. It is huge. Thousands of people in there. Most of the ones that I talked to were from Nicaragua and Venezuela. Guess what? They're not going anywhere. I was very surprised this time to say, where are you guys going? Miami? Oh, no. We're staying here in San Antonio. Well, what are you doing? They're living on the streets. The ones that get kicked out of the facility are homeless. And guess what? Committing a bunch of crimes around that area. And the San Antonio PD, everybody's afraid to do anything kind of enforcement because they're illegal. And somehow they have some sort of protection. This is what has to change.
So weird.
The legal citizens and the U.S. citizen taxpayers of San Antonio, Texas are like, this is backwards.
Yeah, well,
Where's our representation?
I'm based in San Antonio, as you know, and it's a beautiful city. It's run by a bunch of far left-wing progressives that just don't get it. They're never going to get it. And then you've got people like the Castro brothers, Julian Castro, who thought he could be the president, used to be the mayor, and then his brother Joaquin, who is District 20 or 21 representative out of San Antonio. He goes down to the border last week or 2 weeks ago, and he's standing by these buoys that Governor Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Patrick put in the Rio Grande. These buoys are literally telling people, don't try it. And according to Dan Patrick, who I had on the other day, drownings are down 70% because people aren't jumping in the water anymore. They're like, I can't go over that buoy. But Joaquin Castro from San Antonio wants you and I to believe that Dan Patrick, Greg Abbott, I guess Victor Avila and Joe Pags want to kill people coming across the border. That's why there's razor wire. That's why there are buoys. You've been down there. Please fill people in who are watching and listening on the effectiveness of these buoys and this razor wire.
I just saw the buoys. I was right there in Eagle Pass. There, Castro said that there was a saw.
We're trying to hack people in half on the buoys,
nuts.
Right?
He's nuts. What it's doing is exactly what you just said. It's preventing people from coming to actually drown. The buoys haven't drowned anybody. There was a body that got caught because they drowned upriver, and it came down and it stopped there and they sell that to you and spin it as that it was the buoy's fault. It was not. There is no one coming in through those buoys. I stood there. There is a huge presence of DPS troopers, by the way, which is kind of ironic. You would think it'd be Border Patrol at the border, but
right.
we know what's going on there. But
right.
DPS troopers have that area tight. Yes, they're still coming. A lot of them come around. I saw a family of five, a lady with 5 kids come around, and they still come around. They still allow them to come in. Even in front of us, a coyote, a cartel member, pushed a 10, 11-year-old boy straight in front of us through the river, and the kid didn't make it, got caught. Even though the water was up to like thigh high, he was caught in a current, and the coyote had to go and pull him out and save him. This is what's happening down there on a regular basis, but don't accept these lies from the left.
Well, it's grandstanding.
They want to vilify us because we want to secure our border and protect our sovereignty.
And by the way, and correct me if I'm wrong, I have not been there, and you promised me that you'll take me down there sometime. I want to go with you. But these buoys appear to just be telling people, go to the open gates, go to the ports of entry. Just don't try to do it here. You'll drown. You'll die. You might get shot if you go in somebody's backyard. Go to the port of entry. Let Border Patrol and let CPS and let ICE deal with you there. Why exactly is that a bad thing? Are we not saving lives by not letting them jump in this river that they have no idea how to navigate?
That's exactly what you're doing, is saving lives. And actually, if you told these people, do not come because you're not going to be allowed to come into the country, you would be saving them from being raped, the women. The men, by the way, I talked to a lot of them. They were all victimized, and it's no longer the Darien Gap that they suffer the most. It's Mexico. It's the corruption from the cartels, the corruption from the government, and the men get beaten up, extorted, robbed. All these things happen to them, and yes, men get raped too. All these horrific things, and I'm thinking, if they knew that they couldn't come into the United States, they would never put themselves in this situation to begin with. But you mentioned guns. Border Patrol agents were fired upon while I was in El Paso from the Mexican side.
Wow.
We've arrested 2 cartel members in Eagle Pass, Texas, fully armed, Joe. On the Texas side, they are brazen. They fear no U.S. law enforcement. They don't fear, obviously, Mexico. They have that under control. But now they have no regard for our authority whatsoever. They're walking over into the United States fully armed, patrolling ranches, patrolling what they consider to be their border now with guns, and we're doing nothing about it.
Yeah, but Victor, we have to keep the communications open with our friend Mexico. You know what blows me away about that line? And it's Victor Avila. Go to victoravilaforcongress.com, and it's the word for, F-O-R, victoravilaforcongress.com. What blows me away with that claim about how it's going to break communication with our good friend Mexico is you know that we've all seen buses come right to the border, buses that are driven by cartel members, and people are dropped off by the hundreds right there on the border by the cartel, and the Mexican side should and could do something about it, and they don't. They turn a blind eye. Have a nice day. Drop them all off. Take care.
This is what they've been doing. It's like a steam valve. It's a pressure valve that comes down in southern Mexico in the Tapachula area. It builds up. They release them. And they put them on buses, they put them on airplanes. They're coming through Monterrey. Some are coming through Mexico City directly on airplanes. And then you see it kind of dwindle down, and it builds up again, and they release the valve. That I believe personally is in conjunction with the U.S. government and the Department of Homeland Security and the Biden administration, because they don't want everybody to come in at once, and that way it gives them the opportunity to push them through, and process this whole process thing, and letting them in. This is the destruction of America as we're seeing it in front of our eyes. I'm all for legal immigration, Joe. I've
Me
always
too.
said that. I want
We
people
all
to come
are.
to this country legally, but what's happening right now is completely against our Constitution.
It is. It's Victor Avila. Go to victoravilaforcongress.com. Former federal agent. He's a guy who's out there trying to fix what's wrong at the border because of his love for our country, and almost died in fighting for this country in a firefight where he lost his partner, Jaime Zapata. So let me just ask you this. Are we now at the tipping point? Are we at critical mass on the border to where even Democrats on the border are ready for a change? They're going to vote Biden's ass out, going to change over the Senate and make sure that it goes Republican, so we can now do something to help them. When you see a big city like New York crippled by 100,000 illegals, and you've got Dan Patrick on my show last week saying he believes there are 20 million illegals that have come across, either gotaways or the ones that we know about, just since Biden took over, are the people ready on the border to say enough?
I see it on District 23 for sure. They're ready. They've been ready for a long time. They're fed up. They've been betrayed by the representation that they have now. They're ready to make these huge changes. And I tell them this: do you want to make the changes? And when you make the changes, do you want somebody like me that's going to support those changes, or do you want somebody that's going to block those changes? It's an easy decision to make. Either you're with me to fight and save our country, or you're with the other side and the cartels. Because that's you got to pick one now. We're at that point, and I'm getting support from around the country exactly because of that. They know that whatever happens down here, they're going to get that positive ripple effect now once this border is secure. And we are going to change it in 24. We are going to fix this in 24. So let's get the right people in the right positions from Department of Homeland Security, Department of Justice. There's a lot of cleaning up that we have to do. I want to be part of that cleanup. Make me go back in there and be your voice. I tell the people, I'm the employee here. You're the employer.
Right.
I want to do what you tell me to do and nothing else.
VictorAvilaForCongress.com. It's Victor Avila. Victor, thanks for coming on. And do me a favor, keep on reporting back to us and let us know what's going on. I know there are good people trying to make positive change there. It's very hard when you're up against the federal government. Thank you, Victor. Appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
All right, brother. We're back after this. Stay right here.